Anyway, I'd like to call the meeting to order February 29th. Happy leap year. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So, what do we have on the agenda, Gary?
So, thank you, Madam Chairperson. We have tonight the Dartmouth Police Department, Chief Levesque's here, and then we have DPW, Water, Sewer, and Trash for tonight. So, seeing that the chief is here, we would like to invite him to discuss his budget for FY '25.
Welcome.
I shouldn't need it. It also come up on this screen too. Come up here? Oh, it doesn't. All set? That's just a PDF of the budget, and then I'll go into the PowerPoint after, so, yeah. Okay. All right, good afternoon. I'll just start by going through the budget first. We'll kind of go page by page, address any questions as they come up. So the objectives that I've listed, and this is supported later in the budget, I'm looking to increase the supervision in the patrol division. We did an analysis of our call volume, identified when we're busiest. Essentially, the peak times for us is noon to 8. We currently have 2 supervisors assigned on the 8 to 4 shift and also the 4 to 12 shift. So this would be essentially an overlap shift that would cover half of the day shift, half of the 4 to 12. During that time, if all supervisors were to show up, there could be as many as 3 working during the noon to 8. Many times, there's someone utilizes benefit time, they take the day off. That puts us down currently to 1 supervisor during that peak time. This would increase that number up to 2. I also would foresee potential overtime savings with this position, as it would overlap both shifts and could save on replacing supervisors if they were to utilize time off. Like I said, it is a busy time for us. With all the increased duties, responsibilities that officers have, I think proper supervision is more important now than ever. So I've requested that additional supervisor in this year's budget and outline the cost estimate of $13,683 to fund that position. Next on the list is to replace and update our records management system, computer-aided dispatch. Our current system, it works. We've had it since the 90s. It doesn't have some of the modern features. I'm going to go into that a little more later in the presentation. The company has no plans to update it to include these features. We're looking at a different product from the same vendor. We've been talking about this for at least 2 or 3 years now, about the software upgrade. Essentially, once you sign on with the company, which at this point wouldn't be earliest, would be July if we get funding, you're looking at about a 12-month implementation period. So it wouldn't be till about July 2025 at the earliest where we'd actually have the software up and running.
I feel like this was on last year's budget. Was it just a discussion, or?
It was a discussion, and it was also on the CIP worksheet, but it was the year ahead of time, and so now it's moved back, and kind of this is the year we're going to talk about actually funding it. Final item is, has to do with vehicles. It's a big part of our operation is purchasing vehicles, as well as fueling and maintaining the vehicles. Back in 2020, when they came out with a hybrid version of the police cruisers that we use, we started slowly transitioning to those vehicles, and have been purchasing them since they were available in 2020. Our frontline cruisers are almost exclusively the hybrid vehicles at this point, and we have been able to realize about a 30% savings in fuel costs. A lot of times our cruisers end up idling, and that's where you realize the most savings with the hybrid vehicles when they're idling. So idling meaning the officer's on a call, the car is able to utilize all of its emergency lighting, radio systems, computers running off of the hybrid battery. Not so much when they're actually moving, but we do spend significant time at calls, monitoring traffic, different things when the cars aren't driving around. We're also looking we're applying for a grant to get an electric vehicle fast charger, 2 of those units installed at the police station. That would allow us potentially to look at electric vehicles into the future looking forward. The main thing with us is we'd have to have the ability to charge those vehicles quickly, and that's what these chargers would allow us to do. And when I say quickly, I mean about a 20, 30-minute turnaround time, which is about the time it takes for officers to switch vehicles during the day, going from one shift to the next. These particular charges would also be open to the public, and the town would be able to charge for that service. So whether we utilize them or not, they're an additional resource for the town, people coming into town to be able to charge vehicles, and the town could potentially generate some revenue from that. But additionally, like I said, it would give us the ability to try some of these vehicles. In the meantime, if we wanted to go down that route. It has been difficult to get the vehicles we use. You know, many manufacturers are still struggling, and they've canceled our orders. They have us reorder. We're currently behind on getting vehicles. So this might be a time when we want to try out a vehicle like this, because we're just having a very hard time getting the vehicles that we've been used to purchasing. We may actually be forced this year to make a decision to order at least a couple of the gas versions, because they seem to be a little better producing those than the hybrids. So we're looking at all the different options, but it's not easy purchasing vehicles, and it hasn't been for 2 or 3 years now, unfortunately.
If I may ask a question?
Sure.
I've been watching TV and a lot of these finance shows talk about electric vehicles, and the biggest problem isn't so much the vehicle itself, it's the charging stations and not having enough of those around. And I overheard you saying that you would entertain possibly the town using that, and that may cause more of a line, if you will, a queue at some of these stations that would require to have a vehicle, charged. So I think that should be considered too before we go too far down this path with electric vehicles.
So, they have chargers at the mall currently, at the Dartmouth Town Center. There's chargers. What we're looking to do essentially, if we were to move forward with getting vehicles in our fleet that are electric, we could reserve the charger at those times so that they would be unavailable to some members of the public. The chargers we're looking at essentially would support up to 4 vehicles at a time for charging.
All right, so before we went down the road further, we'd have to make sure we had enough charging stations before we purchased any more electric vehicles, if you went in that direction.
Sure, like for instance, we're not going to purchase any electric vehicles if we're not able to get these chargers installed, because
Right.
we're going to need a way that we have some control over. So we're not going to have our police cruisers at the mall waiting in line to charge, in other words.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yep.
Yep.
It's hard to see that, but that's the organizational chart. I think you all have copies of it.
Chief, we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Terry?
Brian, I saw that you're having trouble filling the traffic, the crossing guards at the schools, but I don't see it in the budget. Are you continuing to fund it, even though you can't fill the position?
Yeah, it's in the budget.
I was looking at the list of,
So,
as long as it's in the budget, that's good. Thank
yeah, it's in the budget. And, that's a big topic for sure. So back in September and October, we had started out with four of those positions. Between September and October, we lost three of them, and we lost our remaining one this month. She moved over is now a dispatcher with us. As we started to see the problem, we lost that three. We had our traffic safety unit go out there, evaluate the schools, propose some changes. Some changes were made. The situation was a lot better. It allowed us actually to get by with just that one. Once we lost that remaining one, we went back out there, we looked at everything again, and we've been working closely with the schools to make sure that the children can get to school safely, which is our priority. And what we've come up with now that's been working well, I was out there several days this week, because this was the first week that we didn't have that position out there, is how is the traffic flow? So we've had part of our traffic unit out there, making sure that the cars are going 20 miles an hour like they're supposed to maintain safety. School resource officers have been kind of watching the crosswalk, which is a short-term solution because I'd rather than be doing other things, they're there more for safety and security. But right now, this was thrust upon all of us. And so in order to, ensure safety of the children, we've been doing that. The school department is in progress of getting a crossing guard at the middle school. And we've been working with DPW to get some, we had a grant that we obtained earlier in the year for some solar-powered signs. And what they do is they give you the immediate feedback as to how fast you're going. So they not only tell you what the speed limit is, but to tell you how fast you're going. Temporarily, we've put up our mobile signs in the area to give that feedback and kind of slow the traffic down. That's been working out very well. But the more permanent solution is to get those signs put up. The other thing that DPW has applied for through SERPED, and it sounds like maybe as early as this spring, they're going to get a traffic analysis study done. That's the first step in getting a set of traffic control lights, a set of lights put up at Hawthorne and Slocum. And that would have the pedestrian crosswalk and all that. And it's just everyday traffic. It can be difficult coming out of Hawthorne Street sometimes. I think that would be a welcome improvement, not just for the schools, but for the whole town. So the DPW is working to try to make that happen as well. But through the use of making sure that the cars drive safely, stop at the crosswalk, obeying the speed limits, and with the crossing guard situation, it's actually been working out quite well, being out there and seeing things. And we have a few more ideas we're going to propose to the schools to even fine-tune this even more now that we're able to see it actually in action.
After listening to you at the select board meeting and just the level of communication that you apparently are having with the school system, I commend you for trying to get ahead of this because it's something that made a lot of people nervous. So
Yeah.
You've done a lot of creative kind of thinking and trying different solutions for it. So
Yeah,
thanks.
for sure.
I can't find it in the budget, but I'll ask Gary later where it is.
Yeah, I'll point it out right here.
Okay.
It's actually up on this screen. It says traffic supervisor salaries.
Oh, it's a traffic supervisor, so it's not
Right.
crossing guards. I
Yeah,
see that.
so, and here's the thing too, we're kind of in a transition right now. So we had traffic supervisors historically, and they would be, the women out there who would be directing traffic, right? And they would also cross the students that would come in the crosswalks. Since we've made these changes and we're kind of looking at how things are going, they're actually going fairly well with the traffic flow itself. Now, the traffic flow is certainly a police department function, and that's what we do, and that's why we've had our traffic division out there, making sure the cars are driving safely and so forth. We're kind of seeing less of a need, quite honestly, to be out there directing traffic. So this is kind of evolving now into more of a crosswalk type situation, which honestly is what most communities have, is they have, it could be volunteers, it could be staff that man the crosswalks and get the students across safely. So, and that's what the middle school has now. They're going to utilize an existing staff member who is going to basically take care of the crosswalk at the middle school. That's the main school that has students that walk to school. They've all been offered bus service. The school department did that to try to encourage them to take the buses. There are still walkers. I was out there, and there are still students walking, and they have that ability to do that. And that's why they're looking at putting the crossing guard. Quinn School is a little bit different situation as far as walkers go. A lot of the times, there are people who walk into the school, but it's mostly the parents who drive the students, park on the side streets, and then cross the road. So we're looking at some improvements in that area where they may not have to cross the road, but they'd still be able to drive their, children to school and not utilize the existing drop-off lane that the school does have as well, where they have the curbside drop-off around the side of the school. So I think this may be transitioning, and I don't know if we're going to look to fill those positions. It might end up turning into more of a cross-guard situation. And at that point, if that's something the school is going to support, that funding may be transferred over to the school department.
Okay, thank you.
But obviously, the budget was created a month, 2 months ago, and before this whole thing happened.
So, Ron, just step back on your first objective there with the third supervisor.
Yes.
For the shift. I'm just trying to understand your statement that there's potentially some savings there if someone to call in sick. When I look at it, you've got 2 supervisors on the 8 to 4, and then 2 on the 4 to 12.
Yep.
And this new position would be 12 to 8, so it would overlap 4 and 4. In the event, an example, on the morning shift, one of your supervisors calls an ill and is not showing up, will that, am I led to believe that that 4-hour morning shift is going to be 1 supervisor and then 2 in the last 4 hours of that shift? How will that work? Where is the savings coming? Will you
Sure.
move?
You need a little more information. So it's 8-hour shifts for the supervisors, and we need to have at least 1. We scheduled 2, but we require at least 1. So in the example you gave where the day shift, let's say, for instance, both supervisors did not come in that day. We would have a 4-hour overtime block from 8 until noon, but then at noon, the noontime supervisor would come in and eliminate that additional 4 hours of overtime that otherwise would have created overtime.
And the same, if one supervisor called in sick, you would not have to fill in that first 4 hours?
Correct.
Correct,
Yep.
okay.
And
So
if-
that's where the savings is.
Exactly. Yep. And sometimes, some of the supervisors will take half a day off, and they might take sometime noon or later off, and in that case, there'd be no overtime as a result. The purpose of this position isn't necessarily to reduce the overtime, but that's kind of a side benefit.
No, but it's, right, and I just want to understand that, but I understand it's
Right.
not, you're not going to save money from this, but you mentioned there's a
Right.
potential for some savings. I just
Sure.
wanted to
Yeah, I
understand
think
what that
there's-
savings was.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to have some savings offsetting overtime. And so the figure I gave before as far as the cost, some of that will be offset with savings in overtime.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so this is a summary. It kind of gives a high-level look at the overall budget and compares it to previous years. In the description column, I try to make a comment on any differences, either an increase or a decrease in what you see as compared to the previous year. So a lot of times, the difference in salaries has to do with, there's 2 main issues I see a lot. One of them is the negotiations with unions, there's contractual raises, there's step increases that union members receive, and the other issue is new hires. So when a senior employee retires and we hire someone new, generally there's a savings in there because they're going to start at the lower step versus maybe being at the top step when they leave. So that accounts for the majority of the differences that you see there. The only one I put another comment on is the officer salaries, where there's an increase, and the majority of that increase is due to that additional position. As I said, it was about $13,683 estimated increase, so that's the majority of that difference. Overall, the budget actually decreases, but I do want to point out that it's not accurate because the union's been in negotiations now for a couple of years. They haven't had an increase, and so they haven't gotten a raise. So on paper, it looks like a decrease, but eventually it's going to be an increase. I just don't know what that figure is going to be because they're currently in negotiations. Questions on on the summary sheet. Okay. This is all the details essentially of where that summary was, the data comes from for the summary. I really can't see it, but you have it all in front of you. Next big item on the budget's the expenses. We try to maintain level funding each year, although costs are rising with different things. We've been fortunate to realize fuel savings. I've reallocated some of that money into our software costs predominantly, because that's where we've seen the largest increase, is our software expenses. Annually, I look at the budget, I evaluate it, and generally all you see in the column there that shows the differences from one budget to the next is just some small adjustments that I made, but in the overall budget, there is no increase or decrease in it. So we were able to maintain level funding once again this year.
I have a question. Whatever happened with the license plate readers?
Yep, that's coming up.
Okay.
Yep, in the presentation on the metrics. I know you guys like to hear about, where is the money going, what are we doing with it? So in the metrics, we're going to talk more about the plate readers. They've been operational now for about 5 months, so we have some data to share with that.
So, question, Chief, going back to the software, is this, refresh my memory, was this an upgrade or was it a new implementation?
So this software cost you're seeing is just the software we already have, the maintenance agreements on it, stuff like that. In the capital improvement, that is for new software to replace our existing software.
It's new software.
Yep, not this cost, but on the capital improvement side, and we'll get to that page. It has the cost for the software, and there's also several slides on it where I'll discuss that more in detail.
Thank you.
Yep. Just some anticipated retirements over the year. We are down a number of officers currently, and it's you've probably heard, but it's become more challenging to fill these open positions. We're going to try again in the springtime. Once they give a new civil service exam, we'll have a updated list of candidates. Hopefully, we'll be able to hire some. The last process we went through with the current list, unfortunately, no candidates met the qualifications, so we were not able to hire anyone, although we do have openings now, and we are going to have more openings. By the end of the year, I'm anticipating about 10 vacancies in total, so we're hoping to be able to start filling some of those in the springtime.
Just out of curiosity, aside from the civil service exam, I realize is a qualification, what else were you looking for?
Well, it's nothing specific to Dartmouth, but where we're seeing the biggest issue is physical fitness.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's certain there's standards from the state as well as from the academies, entrance requirements for the academies, and the candidates were unable to meet those requirements. So if they can't get in the academy, we really can't hire them because it's going to be kind of fruitless at that point.
Amazing, huh?
So,
Wow.
yeah. And, I mean, to be honest, we're seeing a drastic decrease in the amount of candidates that we have as well. So we have a smaller candidate pool, and sometimes they just don't meet the minimum requirements.
Why do you think you're seeing fewer people? More jobs out there, or?
Sure. Well, I think it's a nationwide trend. The job itself has become more difficult. We're being asked to do more things under increased scrutiny overall. You see the media and the way policing is portrayed and stuff, and that stuff has an effect. And if you're a potential candidate, you might say, I want to do something different, right? I don't want to put myself in that position. Police officers routinely now lose their jobs. Some end up in jail. Pushback from the public, the media, and so we're seeing less people interested in wanting to do that type of work.
Thank you.
In public service in general.
Yeah, yep. Revenue worksheet, it just has our existing and anticipated revenue from the things that we do that generate revenue. We're giving out tickets, the alarm false alarm, I should say, notifications that we give out. There's police officer details, license to carry. We charge for accident reports and parking fines. So on the capital improvement plan for this year, what we're looking at is several items. The first one is the 4 police cruisers that we request annually in order to maintain the fleet in good working order, reduce any chances for, reduce the maintenance costs. We do keep the cars on average for about 10 years in various forms. They start out as frontline patrol cars. They would then move off to a secondary job as either a spare cruiser, detail cars, and then finally we use them. They get converted to either detective vehicles in some cases. We use them for training purposes when officers need transportation to different training that they go to and stuff like that. But that allows us, that kind of reuse and different use allows us to keep the cars for pretty much their entire useful lifespan. By the time we trade them in, they're usually in pretty bad shape and they're really not serviceable any longer.
What's the average mileage?
So the average mileage, and it can be a little misleading because, like I talked about earlier, the idle time. So idle time obviously causes wear on the vehicle and on the engines in particular. And our cars on average idle about 60 to 70% of the time. So the mileage is very misleading, but on average it's about 150 to 200,000 miles on them. And there is a conversion where you could take idle time and convert it to miles. Ford has that formula, and I want to say when we do it, it's usually up around 250,000 mile equivalent. And the mileage sometimes can be harder mileage too than a regular vehicle.
That's over how many years?
Over the 10 years,
10 years.
yeah.
Is that reporting automated, or do the officers fill out timesheets, or
As far as the,
the idle time, cruising time, or whatever?
yeah, so it's recorded, all the cars have GPS, and as part of that fleet management GPS, we get feedback on, the cost of fuel and all the other metrics along with the vehicles. We can see the mileage on the cars, how much fuel they have in them, stuff like that.
Thanks.
Yep. Next item is the software that we talked about. That's the cost there, and like I said, I can talk about it now, but I do have several slides on it, so maybe we can hold on until we get to that portion. Third item is administrative vehicles, what we call them. Essentially what those are is instead of the marked police cruisers that you see, these are also police cruisers. They're not marked. They're for use by myself, deputy chiefs, detectives, and so forth. They'd be unmarked vehicles, and we categorize those as administrative vehicles. They're lower cost vehicles, and they're not as well equipped. So overall, they cost less money than the marked cruisers. Last item is a detective vehicle. They were looking for a minivan to assist with their operations. It's for a specialized unit. I listed it on there because it's more than $10,000 in cost, but I'm actually looking to utilize some of our drug forfeiture money to purchase that vehicle, so it wouldn't be a cost to the town, but I did need to present it to the CIP committee. Due to the cost, I do need to get permission to make that purchase. So it's not a cost to the town, but it is money I'm looking to expend from our fund. And these are just the details on each of those purchases that you saw there. Okay. So now I'll move on to the metrics. I feel like I can't see the bottom of the, oh, it's at the top there? Okay, I'm looking for that. There it is. Thank you. Okay. Many of these slides, we see the same slides every year, and then we go back a number of years to compare to previous years. First slide is our calls for service. So in this slide, This is basically anything that generates an entry in our police log. It includes ambulance calls, fire calls, police calls. Depending on the things we choose to create calls for, the call volume can vary year to year. A number of years ago, this probably explains a lot of the decrease you see maybe going back to 2020 or so, which was also around COVID time. The midnight shift would log in a lot of property checks. They're still doing the property checks, it's just logging them. It didn't make a lot of sense, so we had them stop doing that unless we have a specific property we want them to be checking, because they were kind of variable. It didn't really help us in any way to have them logging. Obviously, they're checking properties all night long, all over town. They can't log them all. They would pick some to log and not others. It just wasn't very helpful to us. So the only property checks they log now in the midnight shift essentially are things specifically we need them to check on. So if they're, for instance, they were doing an upgrade at the North Park, Tim Lancaster had asked us if we could keep an eye. They had the equipment out and so forth, so we asked them specifically to do that, and that was a way for us to verify that the checks are being done, so they would log, for instance, those property checks. But it remains relatively consistent year to year, as you can see from kind of the graph, and then there's a trend line along the top. I like better is crime data, essentially. This to me is a more accurate representation of things we're actually doing. So the bar in red is 2023, and then the previous bars go back previous 4 years. First category is arrests, citations, firearms licenses that we issue, motor vehicle stops, the amount of reports that are generated, traffic enforcement, warrants, and accidents. Varies a bit year to year, but I think overall it's relatively consistent.
Is this how you figure out how many police officers you need based on looking at this over time?
Yeah, so, one way is the call volume and the amount of work that we're doing. We also have to take in consideration just the size of the town as well. So if we had the same amount of work but in a smaller area, you probably could get away with less police officers because you just have less area to cover. So it's kind of a combination of all those factors that we look at. And also deciding what level of service we want to provide as far as response time and items that we handle. So in some departments that may be busier or may be smaller, can't staff properly, there's some things they may not even do. For instance, respond to minor motor vehicle crashes, which legally can be handled between the two vehicles. But we do respond to those when we're called and asked to. So it's level of service as well as a factor that goes into how many officers do as a department need. There's really no standard for it. It's kind of a town and city by city situation.
So you make that decision on level of service?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I've kind of maintained the level of service that's been provided. I haven't made changes to it over the years. It's varied, but mostly, we have 74 as our maximum complement. Rarely are we able to sustain that number. Right now, we're down to about 69, and like I said, I anticipate that continuing to drop throughout the year.
So how would you determine, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but how would you determine the need for, if the level of service was going down in a particular area? Are you looking at like a trend line against these various years?
Yeah, so when I say level of service, I'm referring to the types of calls that we respond to, as well as our average response time to those calls. So if you had, if you're either a busier department or you have less staffing, what they do is they stack calls, okay? So if you call in and it's not really a priority, you get kind of put in a queue, and it could take hours, some departments I've heard days, before you see an officer. Where our response time is very good compared to some of those situations. And most calls we're able to respond to in a timely manner. You also look at how often you have to call for outside assistance, which obviously puts a strain on neighboring agencies. No matter how well staffed you are, there are situations that come up that you can't handle individually. You do need to call for mutual aid. But for the most part, We do track how often we need to call for mutual aid to make sure that we're staffing properly as well. So it's level of service that we're looking to provide, it's how often we're needed outside assistance, coupled with the workload of the average officer. And there's a slide coming up that'll kind of show us, and we compare ourselves to different communities that we'll go into. That helps give us an idea of how does Dartmouth compare to neighboring agencies as well as our comparable communities.
And just one other question, maybe you've already got it up here. Do you have a dashboard that you consult on a daily basis, or some kind of graphic interface telling you how these trends are going on a weekly, monthly basis?
So what we do is we have a monthly staff meeting.
Yep.
We do have a crime analyst on staff, and well, she prepared a lot of this stuff for me tonight, and she prepares a report monthly that myself and the other supervisors will review monthly, and we talk about different trends, including not only our crime data, but officer productivity. We look at each individual officer. We look at how many reports that we're generating, how quickly we're turning those around, meaning they're approved and ready for public dissemination. So we look at all those metrics to make sure that everything's kind of in line with what we like it to be.
Thanks.
Yep.
What's the average amount of cruises that you have at night, we'll say from, I don't know, say anywhere from 6 at night to 6 in the morning? What's the average amount?
How many on the road?
Yes.
It varies a little. We try to bump it up a little bit over the weekend when it's a little busier, but on average, it would be, well, I shouldn't say on average, it could be as low as 4 plus a supervisor would be about the lowest we go. And then from there, it could go up, as high as maybe 8 or so. It all depends on how many available staff I have to put on that shift, coupled with, obviously officers have benefit time, they take off. Most shifts, there'll be several officers off on any given shift. This is a more granular look at the overall crimes that we're dealing with. This is the more serious type, crimes against a person. Slight rise this year in the crimes against a person. During kind of the COVID timeframe, there was a decrease in all crimes. So, as the population in town increases, we have obviously quite a bit of people who come into town to visit as well. It affects the crime trend, so we're showing a 19% increase overall.
That's disturbing.
That's what I was just thinking.
Crimes against property is also up. Having a large retail establishments in town contributes quite heavily to our property crimes with the shoplifting and so forth, consider the property crime.
So the previous slide that was up 19%, when does that become an issue that you have to deal with say, more expense to do something differently to suppress that, or what's the right terminology for that?
Right, so when we can, we certainly try to go after the problem. There are some problems that are more difficult for us to intervene in. Domestic violence, for instance, that's more of a reactive crime. We're not going to get into people's homes and kind of police what they're doing inside their homes, so we get called to those. Other things, we certainly can have an impact on. A number of years ago, we established what I call a community impact unit, and they basically go out and they can target a number of things. It started out more as a drug enforcement, but we've expanded that greatly, their area of responsibility. And that's one of the units I'm requesting that, the van for and stuff, just to assist them in being able to do what they've done. They've been doing some really great work in conjunction with patrol. The cameras that we'll talk about later have proven to be valuable up to this point and our limited exposure to them. So, we're trying to utilize specialized units along with technology to combat some of this stuff. We have the crime analyst who helps, guide us in the right direction to see where there are things that we can focus on. Heavy focus has been on the motels and so forth recently. There's a lot of different things going on there that aren't always that good. So we try to identify areas around town we can have the most impact. And then between the patrol division, who's mainly, busy, quite honestly, handling the calls, we have more specialized units, detective, CIU, who can go out and target more specific problems. So we are tracking what's going on and targeting things whenever possible.
So, not to belabor this, but the previous slide on the 19%, if you were funded differently, would you be able to make that number go down more, or?
Well-
Has it hit a degree, that 19%, where you feel like it might be getting at, I don't know if these are the right words, out of control, or could be suppressed more, or?
Sure. So with more enforcement out there, even something as simple as a car stop, many times car stops lead to discovering other crimes. It's not so much a funding issue, right now, today, it's more of a staffing issue, is what we're facing. So we're working to
What's
hopefully
funding
increase.
is another couple of policemen or something?
Yeah, but like I said, we have the funding, we just can't find
Oh,
the
you can't find the
officers.
people.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it.
So-
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, and this is a more general category, crimes against society, nothing major there. That would be where there's no essential victim, let's say, these victimless crimes. They just consider it crimes against society, and that's not too bad. Just a summary sheet here, kind of showing all the different categories on one slide. Take a look
It's
at.
curious how crimes against property seemed high in 2020, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that the time frame we were in lockdown?
COVID, yeah,
Crimes against property? Yeah,
COVID, yeah.
Oh, what was happening?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can see in 2021, when it continued, that was one of our lower years. So, looking at COVID, I forget the exact time frame when it kind of started and ended, but it was 2020, 2021 period.
Started in March of 2020.
So earlier on, yeah, in the year. So I don't know why it would be so high necessarily,
So it
unless
just
people
seems
were out
curious, 'cause
shoplifting
Who
more.
were these
or-
people and where were they
Right.
going?
Yeah, because there wasn't a lot of people out. I mean, our calls overall dramatically decreased during that time frame.
Not everybody was baking bread.
No,
They weren't staying home.
The only thing, I know we did see a huge uptick in identity fraud and so forth, and it had a lot to do with the COVID money that they had put in. So we were getting hit with a ton of fraud, so some of that might be related to the identity fraud is all I could think of. Because we did see an increase that lasted about a year, where people would use other people's identities to obtain money. So that's something you can do right from home. This slide shows, just gives you some ideas to deal with arrest data as far as the population and where they're coming from. Breaks it down in slides, so about 31% of the people we end up arresting are residents. A higher percentage is the 32% are New Bedford residents. So we share a large border with New Bedford, and a lot of the people come into town, and that's what we kind of see from the results there. But usually they're around the same amount per year to year, Dartmouth residents versus New Bedford residents. So it's just an interesting way to look at some of the different statistics.
So were the arrests basically, the most frequent arrest would be for what?
Well, we deal with a lot of warrant arrests. We deal with a lot of domestic violence arrests, property crimes, shoplifting, and so forth. Those would probably be some of the top categories. This is one of those slides where we compare our stats with other communities. This one looks at Bristol County. What we did is we adjusted it per 1,000 residents. That way we can kind of look at it and compare apples to apples. Obviously, the different communities have different populations, so this kind of normalizes that. And like I said before, and you can see, this includes several cities, as well as the towns in Bristol County. And, kind of as I said earlier, we're a busy community, and it's reflected in these particular stats that kind of highlight the level of activity that we see compared to other towns and cities in Bristol County. It is based on what's reported to the FBI and its actual crimes. So it's not like the call for service and so forth, where different communities may have different requirements. This is kind of the best way we can compare our stats to other communities, is with the information they report to the FBI annually.
So what does that tell you, looking at it, compared to, what does it tell you? Any,
It tells me that we're a busy police department, yeah. When you look at those numbers, and, you know, our numbers are below the cities, but I'm gonna say above every other town.
and that's basically because we're contiguous to the larger cities, I guess.
It seems like it. I mean, we're located in between New Bedford and Fall River. We share a large border with New Bedford. You saw the arrest data on the previous slide, and it shows that, you know, we're arresting more New Bedford residents than Dartmouth residents. And so, yeah, that's a circumstance. So we looked at these towns. They were identified previously in a town study as comparable communities. So most of them aren't near us, but they were identified as comparable communities to Dartmouth. So I include this slide each year just to compare ourselves to those communities, to see how we compare with our comparable communities located around the state. And this slide also reflects, I think, that we're a busy department in town.
You compare staffing in these towns, comparable towns, to your staffing as well, someplace?
I don't think we've ever looked at staffing numbers. Most departments are staffed similarly, from what I've seen. What I sometimes see is a variation in how the staffing is broken up, meaning supervision. And I would say, from what I have seen, which is one of the reasons I'm asking for this other position, is we're not top-heavy, so to speak, with supervision. This is kind of the same crime data, but broken down to those categories we spoke about earlier, with the crimes against a person, property, and society. So you can kind of get a feel for what's going into those numbers. And, you know, as noted earlier, we have a lot of property crime in town. A lot of it has to do with our large retail area. Similar to other towns, you know, you see Braintree on there and Stoughton and so forth. So any towns that have a lot of retail are going to end up with a lot of property crime. So this is the automated license plate reader, the update that we had talked about earlier. Just some quick stats on that. And we currently only have 3 units operational around town. They started in October. We're averaging over 500,000 reads per month. That means it's checking that amount of plates as vehicles drive by. There's a lot of traffic around town. And although it only is 3 cameras, they're keeping pretty active. They've identified 29 stolen vehicles. We've made 5 arrests related to hits that we have outside of the stolen vehicles. And they've assisted us with identifying and locating criminal suspects so far. So feedback has been positive. It's another tool that allows us to become more efficient and effective, especially as, you know, these numbers decrease. Hopefully, we're going to be able to fill these vacancies. But one thing we need to start looking at is how can we become more efficient and effective with lower numbers potentially. So utilizing some of this technology allows us to do things that we could never do without it. To check 500,000 plates a month is impossible, no matter how many staff we had, quite honestly. It's just not something we can do. So far, it's been very effective with a very limited number of these cameras. So at this point, we're going to, because this has been such a short term, I don't want to make any proposals related to cameras. We have 1 additional camera we're trying to get up and running. There's been some issues with Mass DOT. With the camera, it's going to need to be relocated so we can get it powered up. it seems like they don't want the cameras on their infrastructure, so we're going to need to relocate that camera, so it has not been turned on at this point. But they have proven to be a useful tool so far, but I would like to collect more information, continue to utilize them before I made any requests for funding on this. These are being funded out of our drug forfeiture account currently, the 3 to 4 that we have now. And I will be looking to report back next year and possibly request funding if we find it to be valuable and want to continue the program.
Any other technology you're looking at that would make you more effective and efficient that you currently don't have?
Well, the big one is going to be that CAD RMS update system that has features in it that our current system does not have. It has, for instance, a dashboard feature where an officer upon login gets a customized dashboard. It can then show them reports, updated reports. If they're having a lot of, house breaks, car breaks in their area, they would get an updated report each day of where those incidents are happening. Stuff like that. It's just informational that we can pass on in a real-time basis to officers. So that's one of the big things this year. In previous years, I've looked for funding and received it for camera systems. That's helped out tremendously with, we now have body-worn cameras as well as car cameras. That helps officers record what's happening, protect officers from false claims, as well as even doing the report, increasing accuracy on the reports. We've gotten positive feedback from the district attorney's office having the cameras. And other communities have also in the area either looking at cameras or have implemented cameras since that time. But we were one of the earlier departments in the county to kind of get ahead of that. So we're constantly looking for ways to do things better, essentially, and a lot of it has to do with technology these days, as well as training. And, we do quite a bit of training as much as we can. It's difficult to do, and it's expensive to do, too, because a lot of times it ends up, you have to pull the officers off the road and backfill to do that training. So we kind of do as much as we can. We've been looking at some virtual reality training, which is a little bit easier to do. Everything has pros and cons to it, so it may not be quite as good as the real training, but the real training takes a lot of effort to set up and put together with role players and stuff like that. But the training is certainly an important component in what we do, as well as technology.
Does every officer on duty wear a body cam?
Yes.
So this software is now, refresh my memory, is this a new vendor that you're dealing with as opposed to who you're dealing with now? For the
Same vendor, different product.
same vendor? Okay.
Yep.
Very good, thank you.
Same vendor, different product.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is the software, that is the vendor, Central Square. The product we have currently is called IMC. The product we're looking at is called Central Square Pro, CS Pro for short. They're currently the largest provider of public safety software in the United States, with over 8,000 agencies. They're in the implementation phase in the departments listed up there. Chelsea right now is kind of leading the way. They're looking to go live with the system this spring. So probably in the next 2 to 3 months, they'll be going live and start utilizing the system. We've been in contact with their IT person, and we're keeping a close eye on how that goes, because they will be the first in the state to run this software. Every state's a little bit different. So although they're the largest vendor, they do not have market penetration in Massachusetts. IMC has been, I think, probably the #1 product since the 90s. At some point, going back a number of years now, they were purchased by Central Square. I don't think Central Square has any ambition on making the product any better, but they are keeping it usable for the current customers, I think in the hopes that they will eventually switch over to a more full-featured product like their Pro version that we're looking at. New Bedford is several months into implementation, and like I said, it does take about a year. So the good thing is we will not be the first department in the state to run that. Both Chelsea and New Bedford had IMC, or have IMC, because they haven't switched over yet, so they're both running IMC. So I anticipate being able to get some very good feedback from both of those communities, because they're larger than we are. New Bedford uses the same court that we use, and we're e-filing now, so that'll be important to see how that interface works. But we're closely monitoring these departments, and especially looking forward to when they actually go live with it, and we can get some good feedback as to how the product performs. But speaking with Central Square, they are very interested in the Massachusetts market. They have a lot of resources, and they've assured us that they want to put that behind making this a success in the state. And they understand how important these first departments are going to be, and including Dartmouth if we end up going this route. Some of the things that they do that are different than IMC is they have what they call the managed services model, which means right now we have servers, we own them, we purchase them, we set them up, we use our in-house IT resources to repair them when they break, to maintain them, perform updates. They take over all of those functions. They will provide the hardware. One of the things they're going to provide that we don't currently have is what they call a standby server. So essentially they run two servers that are identical, synced up constantly with the same data. If our main server goes down, the system falls back to the standby server immediately, and we do not experience any downtime. This system I'm talking about, it handles our dispatch center as well as allows us to process arrests, officers to do reports. It's critical to our functioning. So to have that standby server, I think, would be very beneficial. They maintain all the hardware, the software. If anything breaks, they take care of replacing it and fixing it. They also replace them on a regular basis as the hardware ages. Obviously, we're under contract with them annually, which is an expense that will be in the next slide, I think, that talks about what that expense is. But that expense, just to give you an idea, it covers all the hardware, the maintenance, the installation. They're going to do system backups, including off-site backups. So that can be expensive as well, to pay a third-party company to do those off-site backups, which are critical, so we don't lose any data. So we're going to have it in-house in two different places, and then also off-site if something were to happen at the facility and both servers get damaged. Antivirus software is obviously important. I talked about the standby server already.
Is this the company that ultimately could produce individual officer dashboards? With the data they collect?
Yes. Yep, same company.
Same thing.
Same
Yep.
company. Is there a plan to have those dashboards rolled out over time?
If we switch to the software, yeah, yep. And all that, one thing this software provides that we don't have the ability to do now is, right now, if we want to do anything different than what the software provides, we're limited. We need to make a request to the company, and unless they get a lot of requests from different departments for the same feature, they're not going to custom build something for us. This software has built in, not only on the dashboard, but it might be in the next slide here. At the bottom, you'll see custom modules, reports, fields, and forms. So this software allows you to build any type of reporting, any fields and forms, fillable forms. And not only can you build them in the software, but you can pull data and analytics from those forms. It becomes part of the software, essentially, and we're able to build it. And not only can we build our own, but departments with this software can share them. So if we see that New Bedford has something that would be beneficial to us, they can just email it over to us. We put it in our system, and now it's part of our system as well. So it allows us to customize the software, essentially, to meet any needs we might have. If we're doing reporting on a specific incident that no one else is, we don't need to go back to the vendor and ask that they add this. We can add it ourselves. Some of the other features that I'll just point out is kind of the reporting. Right now, we have to go into the database directly to pull out a lot of the data that you saw presented. The software we have has limited reporting, where this software essentially has that database access built into it. Anybody with a little bit of knowledge with this software can go in, pull out data. It'll pull graphs, different things to help us. We spend a lot of time putting information in this system, and this allows us to get some of that knowledge back out as to what we're seeing. The AVL is automatic vehicle location. That's going to do our mapping. It'll be able to show dispatch where all our cruisers are. It can also route officers to a call. So if they get assigned to the call, with the click of a button, it knows where the car is, it knows where the call is, it'll give them the route to that call. It can also, in dispatch, recommend vehicles to send based on their location, and not just how close they are, but actually the route they would take to get there. So the system looks at the routing. If it's a priority call, it can recommend vehicles based on their arrival time. It has crime mapping, but not only for us, it also has a public crime mapping, a website essentially that residents could go to look for the crime in their area. And it'll give you to the nearest block roughly, just to, some anonymity to people, and it'll give you a crime category, so you'll be able to see that on a map in basically real time. That's just a highlight of some of the additional functionality of the software.
I got a question, getting into reports. Are these, I know they're probably canned reports, but can you change the parameters that you pass in for information? Say if you want to do a select on, say, how many arrests were for this reason, could you tweak that report to give that to you? Or you have to rely only on what that canned report can do?
Yeah, no, the reports are very configurable as far as what reporting you want.
Okay, that's my
Yep,
question.
Yep,
Good.
the reports are.
Good.
So the cost, we were looking at essentially a 3-year cost of $295,906,000. That's to the implementation and the first couple of years of the maintenance agreements for that. When I spoke about this last year, the cost was $524,000. We made a couple of changes in the pricing. Basically, like I said earlier, the company is interested in market penetration in Massachusetts. So as the earlier departments, they generally give heavier discounts to them to get, kind of spread the word and have departments up and running with the software. The other thing we looked at was data conversion. When you take your existing data and you migrate it into the new system, it's very costly to do. But above and beyond the cost, some of the concerns I have is we have a lot of data. And not all of it is good data, I'll say, because it depends on the quality of data what officers put in. One of the things, for instance, we run into is putting the same person in more than one time. And we've tried over the years to merge these records, but I'm going to be honest, there's way too many of them, and we're never going to get them all merged. Data conversion can also be a little bit messy because you're taking one set of data and you're trying to map it into a whole different piece of software. So what I'm proposing as an alternative to that is we're going to maintain access to our IMC system. We own the system. We're not going to continue to pay for updates and maintenance on it, but we are going to retain access to the system. So all this data we have, we're still going to have access to. We're just not going to take some of it outdated, some of it bad, and pull it into a new system. My proposal would be to start with a clean slate, and as you enter information, it's put in properly because the system's going to check and make sure it's put in right, and we're not going to hopefully run into the same problem in the future where we have data that's not exactly the greatest data, while maintaining access to our previous data. Is the idea behind this. Now, most departments do data conversion. It adds, I think, well, probably around $200,000 to the price. It is very costly to do, and I do have some hesitation about doing it. So there's concerns in the department about losing that information. So we're talking about that. We're talking that through. Essentially, we're not losing it. It just won't be in our main system. It'll be in our secondary system, which would be IMC, which would be still up and running. A lot of this data gets outdated, so I would say the first year will be the toughest for us if we go this route. But as we populate this information, the people we deal with frequently, after about a year, they will be in the system already, and we'll start to build this, and probably around year 3 or so, I think we'll very rarely be going back to the old data, because at that point, it's at least 3 years old, and the relevancy is going to drop dramatically. But for our investigators, crime analysts purposes and so forth, we're going to have access to IMC. So when we want to go back and compare 10 years worth of crime data, we can certainly do that. If we need to know someone's distant history, we're going to be able to go back and look into that. So just going down on this slide here, the next thing compares the annual cost. So this would essentially start in FY '28. You have IMC's cost and CS Pro's cost. We would need about an additional $62,000 in our expense budget to fund this software annually. And then as far as some additional kind of savings, IT support, as I talked about, this is a managed system managed by the vendor. I don't think that would necessarily amount to any financial savings, but we have 2 IT personnel for the town right now. It would free up that person to do more things around town, potentially saving on hiring outside vendors, or allowing them to be more attentive to other needs for us and the town. Hardware costs, like I said, are covered, as well as the off-site data backup, antivirus protection. And I'm looking to be able to consolidate some software. So like I mentioned, now our cars have GPS through a third-party vendor. This software has GPS, the AVL functionality. I'd be able to reduce that. There is some specialized software that we use as well that I'd be looking to eliminate, trying to consolidate software, paying less in these fees because they do add up. And just to streamline the process. The more software you have, the more updates, the more officers have to learn. I'm a big fan of trying to simplify things, and the more we can utilize this one piece of software, I think the better off we'll be. We'll be maximizing the use of it, and we are paying a lot for it. To say, precisely what it can do, I don't think we're going to know. We've had several demos at the station showing officers and myself what it can do, but a demo and actually being able to use it are 2 different things. So I don't want to get too far ahead and say we're going to be able to definitely eliminate certain pieces of software, but I do think we will be able to eliminate some of our other software costs when we transition to this
Well,
program.
you talk about IT support, so they're gonna be maintaining the servers, correct? And now, as far as purging information goes and historical data, what's the requirement? Are they gonna be the ones that are gonna be doing the purging? Or are you gonna say, hey, after so many years, we want this purged? Or how are you gonna handle that?
Yeah, we've never purged data.
No matter how old it is, you're gonna keep it on file?
Right, yeah, we have data now going back to mid-'90s.
Okay, so they're gonna have an issue with server capacity after a while.
It's a database system, and so we're not talking about, a lot of times, big files would be video, would be the biggest, and then you got pictures and stuff like that.
That's different.
This is more just text, most of it, quite honestly. There's a few pictures in, but booking photos and so, but not a lot. There's not a lot of storage that is required with this system. We have, through our camera system is where we're using a lot of storage capacity right now. We have terabytes of data already, and we've only had the cameras for about 1.5 years. So luckily, we have unlimited storage with the vendor, because I wouldn't want to pay that bill individually.
Yeah.
But the video is huge, but that's a separate storage system that we use for the video.
Gotcha. Okay, good.
I think that was the last slide.
Very good.
Questions, anyone? That was great.
Thank you.
Very good
Very,
presentation.
very
Thank
nice
you.
presentation, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to say that I bring my kids to both the middle school and the high school, and the traffic has been better than it has been in the past.
Yeah, like I said, I've been out there, and
Pretty
that was
easy
kind of,
flow.
that was
Yeah.
kind of my vision of it too. It was
Yeah.
better than I expected.
Yeah.
We had done some limiting testing before.
Yeah.
We did that, but I think it has been better, I
Thank you.
agree.
It-
So,
It's really been
and I
fun,
also
thank
have
you.
children in the school system, so I'm very familiar with the school
Yeah.
system and the traffic flows and all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah. No, and we're continuing to monitor that and work with schools. And I think we have some position on it, so.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night.
Gary, can I
Gary.
just ask you a question before we hear from Tim? I was going back through the budgets to see if we've received what we requested from all the departments. Conservation Commission, did we really just get one page with one paragraph from him?
From the Conservation
Commission.
Department?
I could only find one page.
I think that's what they
I
submitted,
think
yeah.
it was, yeah. I don't have it with me,
That's
but yeah, he had that one description.
We can ask him to redo the form and have him
Okay.
comply to the form. I'll tell him tonight.
Gary, I have a bit of a concern before we get Tim started here, is because two people have to leave at 5:30, and I'm certain DPW has a lot of information to present.
Yeah, can I just make a recommendation that maybe we look at the minutes to vote on those and then pick it up, or we can hold the minutes to the next meeting?
Well, I'm not worried about the minutes, I'm worried about the fact that partway
Yeah,
through his
Tim has to
presentation,
present.
two people have to leave. And I didn't know how long he would be, and I didn't know if it would be convenient or good or whatever, or if we maybe move it.
Well, could we meet?
Move Tim's
We don't have a meeting
presentation?
scheduled next week, right? Could we meet?
What's on the agenda for next week?
Well, we have,
Because Tim
next
is
week,
excited to hear this.
next week, we do not have a meeting on the 7th.
I mean, I don't know.
But is the possibility that we could?
Yeah, I'm not sure who's available on the 7th.
Well,
I won't,
Most people
I
there.
won't be available.
I'm not available either.
Yeah, there were a few people that
Well,
weren't
back to that
available
again,
on the
Janine,
7th, so.
But you still have enough.
Jim, how long do you think this presentation is gonna be?
Probably close to the Chiefs.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have all the metrics that he had, but I do have a,
Okay, so we-
Large budget.
So you just won't accept any questions from us, that's all right?
exactly.
Okay.
So we apologize in advance that two people are going to get up in 15 minutes and
All right.
leave.
Hey, getting this,
I got a question. Council on Aging, if she took exception to the fact that, like, she didn't like the form, my emails that I read, I'm talking about, she took exception to that. She said, if you want me to give us a chance to do a narrative. I haven't spoken to her since because I have enough on my plate, but I gotta talk to her. I don't know what the hell the big deal was.
I'm gonna send it out to people so we can see. It looks different. You know, they didn't all follow the same format. I'm happy to-
Oh, me too. Oh, absolutely. No question about it.
Did you want to look at the minutes while they work on those, or? Just so that you have enough voting
Sure, why
members
not?
to,
Yeah, why don't we do that?
We obviously have a
Yeah.
couple minutes. So they're the minutes
Yeah, voting ain't worth the voting,
from February 22nd.
we have minutes for the 15th and the 22nd that
We
were
have two
forwarded.
sets?
I have to abstain anyway, Gary, because I wasn't here, so.
and
Fine, we still have-
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for February 15th and for February 22nd.
I second that.
So a motion made by Terry and seconded by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor?
And one abstention.
Me.
Oh, I'm sorry, and one abstention.
And
Bill
Kerry,
I wasn't
two
here.
abstentions, Kerry
Yeah,
and
too,
Bill.
because we
Yeah,
weren't,
Carrie was
we
abstaining.
weren't
Oh.
here.
From last week, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Carrie abstains for February 22nd, and Bill abstains for both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, tonight we have also the DPW, Tim Barber, here to speak on the department.
good afternoon.
Thanks for coming, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
So we just have a brief mission statement to provide quality public service to enhance Dartmouth's quality of life through sound management and teamwork at reasonable costs to Dartmouth citizens. Our objectives are to encourage team-building approach, problem-solving, solicit input from staff to improve department efficiency, evaluate all reasonable recommendations, and one of our, big objectives this year was to maintain a level funds through most of our departments' budgets, being creative, with all the increases that we see. All right, so this is our FY '24-25 comparison and showing any increases in any of the budgets. If we start with the administration budget, the increase is 6.9% in salaries, and we level funded the expenses. The salaries were basically for increases in, cost of living expenses, and we funded, last year, we funded the assistant director position. So that added as well. Engineering, we had a 2.5% increase in salaries and level funded expenses. Highway Department, 3.7% increase in salaries, level funded expenses. Snow and ice, level funded currently. Solid waste, we definitely had some increases, 1.5% salaries, 26.1% expenses. And those expenses are mainly repair and maintenance of vehicles, fuel costs, disposal costs for solid waste, and the regional refuse annual assessment to dispose of the percentage of waste that we dispose of at Crystal Hill increased as well by about 8.8%. We also, the past 2 years, we've taken on a lot more customers in our solid waste and recycling. There's a number of waste management facilities that changed hands, and larger companies had bought them in the last couple of years. And we saw, I think due to that, we saw a lot of residents calling up and asking to come into our SMART program, including private areas, private subdivisions. So we had, definitely a large amount of customers come in. So that increases also our bag fees. So we have to purchase more bags, we purchase more recycling bins, and then our disposal costs go up as well. All right, the recycling, we saw a 6.2% increase in salaries and a 9.1% increase in expenses. Same thing, recycling disposal costs, fuel, repair and maintenance. Transfer station costs 6.1 in salaries, expenses 44.9. That's the largest increase, and that as well is disposal costs. We saw a large increase in disposal costs for C&D waste, and we'll be working to adjust our C&D charges, fees to offset that. So every year we see increases in different recyclables, and in C&D has been increasing tenfold.
So do you have a, sorry to interrupt, but do you have when you add all this together, do you have a rough idea of, say, over a 5-year period, how much the annual increase has been as a percentage?
In 5 years? I know this year, the total DPW increase was 3.7%.
Do you feel like gut feels similar over the previous 4 years?
I think so. I think last year we had a higher percentage. I don't have that with me, but it was, we increased a lot more. We weren't level funded in many departments last year. We had a couple years of high fuel increases that we bumped up a lot of the line items and repair and maintenance in vehicles as well. So I have to look at my percentage last year, but it was probably closer to 10, 11%.
And I hate doing this to you, but previous to that.
Yeah.
That was like an
That
outlier.
was similar, yeah.
10%?
Yes, yes,
So it's more like 3.5 to 4% a year?
right, yes, yeah.
Nice.
So our construction division, we were at 5.7% increase in salaries. We level funded the expenses. Fleet maintenance, 7.8% salary increase, and level funded expenses. The water pollution control, 7% in salaries, and we level funded expenses. I don't know how we did that, but we did it. The sewer, 7.6% increase in salaries and level funded expenses. And then the water enterprise fund, 2.4% increase in salaries, 0.7% increase in expenses. This is our administration budget. You can see the, the salaries and the increases. That budget's level funded. I don't know if there are any questions on any of those line items. Sorry, this is sideways, but probably.
You can flip that, Tim.
Just
Near the 162,
Yeah, hit the.
see it, the arrow?
Yeah.
No,
What was that?
Up at the 162, 9 of 162, see it, page 9 of 162? Yeah. Go over,
Oh, right there.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no.
That's the administration.
Can't see anything.
Next, we have the engineering budget. We're pretty close in fuel. I think we'll be okay in most of the line items there.
I think he's comparing
Double click. This is the staff in the engineering division. We have one vacant engineer position. We actually have about 13 vacancies within the department. Most of the vacancies are, you'll see they're drivers, about eight or nine drivers vacancies, and the rest are either machine operators or water pollution control operators, water operators.
Is that just from a lack of applicants?
Yeah, so we had a number of drivers resign to go to other municipalities and other jobs that were offering higher pay. And we've been advertising these positions for a couple years now, and we haven't had a lot of applicants that have licensed CDLs. You know. That it affects our solid waste recycling division, construction division, water pollution control, water, and especially our snowplow efforts. And you see, we're offering on-call plow drivers that have CDLs to drive our equipment to supplement the lack of drivers. we've had our mechanics go out and drive a trash truck, because we don't have enough drivers, so.
Tim,
Yes.
you have a huge budget, and one of the things the Finance Committee has been looking for is effects of what you were just talking about on the budget. It would be helpful, I know what you submitted to us was the standard form with the goals, but it would be helpful to have what you're talking about right now in writing. If you could put together, you can ask Gary for the outline that we.
Absolutely, yeah.
That we ask for people. But that's the kind of information that helps the Finance Committee when we're making recommendations about supporting the budget or not.
Sure.
And I know you have a huge budget, so.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here we have the highway budget. Salaries, and then we have, you can see the repair and maintenance line item, the 552,402 there. We had an increase there. We increased that about $10,000, but we actually spent about 15 over budget last year, and this year we're already at the $75,000 mark, so we're already at 100% at this time of year. Parts, just vehicle parts, especially for the large vehicles, the price increases have been astronomical, from brakes to tires to, engine components to hydraulics. So this is our staffing in the highway division. Going under the name column, you can see we have 1, 2, 3 vacancies in the highway division. One's a hydraulics operator, the other 2 are drivers.
Hasta luego.
Have a good evening.
Tim, I got a question.
Yes.
Just thinking about the CDL, these drivers. How far are we from being competitive salary-wise to where these drivers that we had are leaving? Are we way underneath where they're going as far as their pay goes, or? Because that's obviously the criteria of why they're leaving. It's the
Right,
pay.
so I think, we're kind of low. I do see a lot of the advertisements. Other communities are having the same issues. But I do see some of the advertisements from other communities, and a lot of them are offering higher wages for drivers. The state is a big one. They're offering really higher wages than most municipalities, so they're taking a lot of the drivers as well. And private companies that are hiring. And a lot of private companies are offering sign-on bonuses, which we don't have. And I spoke with the city of New Bedford recently, and they were asking me, we were discussing how we can be creative and offer incentives to keep our drivers that we have, and offer incentives to new drivers coming in. So I have recommended increasing the wages for drivers coming in, and it's possible that position needs to be reclassified.
So if you had to put a percentage on it, would you say we're 10% below? If you could.
We're probably 10% below the state, but less than the 10% with other municipalities.
Gotcha, okay.
We've been dealing with this for a couple of years, with this position
Yeah.
in particular, and, when the economy is good, a lot of private businesses are paying CDL drivers more money.
Sure.
And then the state is also paying more money, which is the state. One thing that we look at is, the town does not really lay off employees when, the economy slows or things happen, unless it's drastic. The state in private business, they can pay more, but they have more flexibility to just lay people off. And that's not something we're looking to do. Then when we evaluate reclassifying a position or paying it more, well, these positions are part of a collective bargaining unit. They're on one grade. If you want to reclassify them to another grade, then you need to look at the whole collective bargaining pay schedule, and you have to reallocate all those positions. So it's not just paying some CDL drivers a little bit more money, it's really adjusting the whole pay schedule because it's based on roles and responsibilities and, duties of the position. So it just happens that there's a shortage of CDL drivers, but, when you look at the pay scale for all of DPW, they're not as high. I mean, they're kind of lower on the list overall. So now you're looking at increasing every position above that just to compensate, to fill in the CDL drivers.
I was just curious, Sean, what
No, I mean, I'm just trying to kind of articulate that where we're at, it's not as,
the heck is that?
it's not as simple as just increasing
Sounded like an
the
alarm.
hourly rate.
Sound like an alarm.
Yeah.
Sounds like vacuum.
The CDL licenses are a big responsibility, and they're becoming more and more increasingly, responsibility-wise, where, you need your physicals and your health card, and you need, you have random drug testing, and you also have to register with the national, it's called the clearinghouse, with your driving record, so everybody can see your driving record. So that, all that responsibility, some people may say, well, I'd rather just stay a laborer, and get paid a laborer fee, which is not much less.
One thing we've done along with, hiring the contractor drivers during storms is also to reimburse employees who do take CDL training, and the town, once they pass the test, the town will reimburse them for that training. So.
So we created that last year in our operating budget with a reimbursement once they pass the test. And we came up with a cost of about $2,500 per employee for a reimbursement, because at that time, last year, the cost to take to school was roughly $2,500 to $3,000. Since then, it's doubled. The cost to take the class has doubled, so it's hard to get, even current employees to put up $5,000 to take the class, But we just hired one new operator in training for a CDL license, so they come in as a laborer, and they have 6 months to obtain their CDL license, and we'll reimburse them. So we're working on hiring him, and I think he's starting in a week or two.
Nice.
Yep.
John, we just saw an example, and I can't remember what department it is, and I think it was a management position where, we had the salary, and one of the things I had questioned, what was the certification, which was part of the salary, so if they're required to have this cert, they get X amount of dollars for that certification. Why couldn't we do that in the CDL position, rather than make it part of, this is your hourly wage? Say, if you have this certification, and we know the market's tight for that, and it's difficult to get, why aren't we increasing that line item on the certification and not the salary line item? I'm just looking at, trying to be creative to say, what would the union say if you did something like that? Hey, we can't get the certification, so we're gonna up the price for that certification. Somebody in the union wants to go get that, this is what you're gonna see if you get that certification, and keep the salary the same. I'm just trying to be creative there.
No, I think we've looked at that, and we can continue to look at it, but, one of those things is there's a lot of other positions, particularly in DPW, that have certifications that are just part of the position, so you would have to look at all of those.
But would we? I mean, because if there's not a shortage of, a mechanic may have some certification that's required, but if there's not a shortage in the market, then the market isn't paying for that certification because they can't get that salary or anywhere else. We're seeing that in the CDL category where the market is paying huge money, so why not pay for that certification?
That I agree with
To
as
try to be
well, but
competitive.
It's a collective bargaining
Right,
unit, so
it is.
that would have to be collectively bargained, and then I can't speak for the union itself, but I'm sure they would be like, well, if you're paying for this certification, even though there's a shortage.
Right, it seems to me that you could make the argument, because the backup documentation is there. If
Right.
this is a problem that's across the state, municipal and states are having problems with CDL drivers, and maybe they're not having problems with a mechanic certification, well, we need to adjust this, and I would think the union would say, yeah, you're right, how can I ask for increase? Because the mechanic and somebody else need a certification, or your hoisting license, for an example. Well, we're in the market rate when you got a hoisting license and a mechanic's license. We're not in the market, obviously, when it comes to the CDL, so why not increase that certification? And I would think, you hope the union would see that. Yeah, you're right. How can we justify an increase where, the market's not there for those other certifications?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, it helps to be competitive, and like I said, I've spoken to other municipalities with the same ideas, being creative and offering some kind of incentive for CDL licenses, so. All right, so this is our, let's see, sorry. Solid waste, enterprise. You can see again, 5402, repair and maintenance of vehicles. Last year we spent over double the budget. So this year we did increase the budget quite a bit on that line item. As you work your way down to the solid waste enterprise fund trash bags, 54208, that every year that increases, both for the bag costs per bag and the number of bags that we're purchasing because of the number of people that have come on to the program. So we've another large increase. And then we have gasoline. So last year we increased the fuel budget in solid waste and recycling divisions to offset the increase of fuel, and this year we're doing a smaller increase because we're overspending as well. Let's see. So in our solid waste division, that's the one vacancy, so that's a driver. Oh, and so you can see, let's see, sorry. So that vacant driver, it's a job grade 3, step 1. So it starts at $22.26, cents at the starting step. I think to be competitive, you have to be more in the $25 range. Recycling division, kind of the same line item 52402. It's our repair and maintenance of vehicles. We almost spent double the budget last year, so we increased it another 25%. Recycling disposal costs, that's where we see those large increases in disposing of our recyclables. Years ago, we used to actually get paid for them, and now they cost consistently increase to dispose of them. And then fuel as well. Fuel, last year we overspent after we increased the budget, so we increased it a bit more this year.
What is medical and dental in there?
Oh,
53001.
That's not a very big line.
Oh, yeah, sounded right. Construction, yeah, medical.
Yeah, so it's professional, medical, and dental.
Why, yeah,
Don't normally see healthcare
in there, no,
lines.
no, that's right. You don't.
Was it the case maybe in the past where you had to pay maybe like a claim for one of the employees that were maybe like workers' competent, but that would fall
Would
under.
show in here?
But that's an outlier anyway, Gary, you wouldn't have
Yeah.
that as a line item.
I can get the detail.
I was just really curious,
on
because
what it
first of
is.
all, it was $75, and now it's $300. It's just really, because I don't
That was-
understand what it is.
That was the expense, it was expended, $75 was expended last year. The appropriation was 300, so it hasn't increased.
Okay, it's just, but what is it, though?
I think
We
it's
can- I
been
get you the detail
$300
of this.
probably for 10 years, you know, and I can find out what that line item expense was.
Oh, it looks like employment exams.
Oh, the
All the exams.
Dental?
It might just be the
The way it's
label.
coded in
I
Munich.
was going to say, they examine their teeth?
See, I just looked it up. It's the pre-employment exams, so.
pre-employment.
I'm sorry,
there
you don't
go.
meet the qualifications, you had
So
three
that's just sort of a
fillings.
generic label to it?
Well, yeah, it's probably, I mean, some of these, the descriptions of the accounts are older.
Generic.
so,
Okay, all
Yes,
right.
yeah, so when you're interviewed and when you apply for the position and you need a physical, that's right, yeah.
Sure, it's just when it's labeled
Okay.
dental, it's a little
yeah. You need to have good
misleading.
teeth, too.
Yeah, yeah,
Good smile.
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, so this is the recycling division staff. See, there are 2 vacancies, both are drivers. It's tough when you have 2 or 3 recycling trucks and you only have 1 driver.
So Tim, the qualifications for these are the same as the qualifications?
Yeah, it's just, they all require a commercial driver's license, yes. And we're trying to be a little creative, and we switched around some of our capital where we were proposing, and I think in the construction division maybe, we're proposing another 34,000 GVW dump truck with a plow to replace an older vehicle. And since we don't have the drivers, we're looking at an F-550 that doesn't need a CDL driver, where a laborer can drive that vehicle. And you can't get a 10-foot plow, but you can get an 8-foot plow on it, so. So, solid waste enterprise, the transfer station. So this is a transfer station budget. See, the biggest cost increase there was again recycling disposal costs. From, we were appropriated 54,500 last year. Now we bumped it up to 80,000. We overspent by 100% last year, so. Just an update on the transfer station this year. We're currently going through a software change, so we used an AMCS software to track our recycling bins. But we didn't have we didn't have a computer or software at the transfer station for daily use of the transfer station and disposal. So we updated that recently with a new computer and a new software to bring us into the this century, I guess. So any vehicles that go on the scale, we'll register in the software on the weight and the charges, and we can track all that and get those metrics. Typically or historically, our clerical staff or our transfer station staff would use carbon paper to give their receipt and keep a pack of receipts for the daily use at the transfer station. Bring those to our clerical staff at the DPW office, and they would input every receipt into the software. So now it's automatically input when somebody gets on the scale. They'll get the tear weight and then whatever they dispose of in the billing. So we're right now we're kind of in a trial phase of it. We've been for a couple weeks and kind of working out the bugs, and it seems to be working out pretty good. Our transfer station staff. Yeah, so we have a laborer, a clerk, and then we have an operator. All right, construction division. Let's see, we level funded that. Looks like the expenditures were pretty even there. Repair and maintenance was a little high, but we kept the budget the same. And the bottom line worked out. Is our construction division staff. With one vacancy, which is a driver. We have 3 drivers in that division. All right, this is our fleet maintenance. So, again, we spent well over 100% of our budget appropriated for repair and maintenance of vehicles, but we were able to level fund the budget.
Tim,
Yes.
excuse me, when you say level fund, I'm looking at the actuals for 2023 and the budget for 2024. There's definitely disparities there. So they're not level funded. What are you calling level funded?
So you're looking at the expended,
Here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, let's take, for instance, under the construction, the professional salaries. All right, under the 2023 actuals, you had 110,284. 2024 is 112,000. The biggest outlier is the other salaries, which went from $305,161 to $492,607. So that's not level funded.
no, the expenses are level funded. The salaries you have your increase with.
All right, so you're just talking expenses.
Yes, yeah, because
period.
you have your cost of living increases, so you're always going to have an increase annually in your salaries.
I have to go to. I have their same meeting I gotta get to.
There's gonna be nobody here.
There's no committee left.
Maybe we should find a meeting to go.
Sean, I'm getting a complex. You always leave my presentations early.
No, I know, Tim, it's good, it's good luck.
I'm looking at expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. There to there. That's not level funded, never mind.
Yeah, most of the increases for the salary because of contracts, or whether they're union or they have contracts
Yeah, but I'm
in
just
place.
looking at, again, I don't wanna, spend too much time on this, I'm just looking at, even the expenses, if you look at the first one, RM vehicle, that, actually, that's good news, that went down, so, and they go up and down, so they're really not level
So,
funded.
so you're looking at the first column? That first column is what was expended, not appropriated, what was
Right,
expended in
no, so that's
20.
what was expended. You have to look
Yeah.
at the appropriated.
Yeah. The second column is what was appropriated.
If you're comparing 24 to
I'm
25.
looking at this, I'm not looking at that, so.
Oh, you're looking at the munis report. So if you looked
Yeah,
at,
the munis, yeah.
if you looked at that, you'd see the 24 revised budget should be in line with what's the department's
we-
requesting.
Yeah, for 2024,
24 compared to 25, correct?
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I was looking at 23.
Okay, looking at, yeah.
Yeah, it's the-
Yeah, so from FY '23 to '24, they weren't level funded.
I was looking
We-
at that.
Oh, okay.
We had a lot of increases from FY '23 to '24,
Right,
but, and then this year we were asked to level fund.
okay.
All right, back to fleet maintenance, I just went over. Same thing, repair and maintenance costs are high. But, most of the repair and maintenance that the fleet maintenance division deals with is their own, the fleet maintenance vehicles. And they do the work in kind of the accounting for all the town department vehicles that they do repairs on, and they get billed appropriately, so. This is our fleet maintenance staff. We have a great fleet maintenance staff. They're all well certified and do a great job. So, sorry. It's our water pollution control budget. Same thing that, the salaries have increased, but at a larger percentage. We did have an increase in some line items. It's an enterprise fund. I think one of the largest, repair and maintenance at the facility, has gone up. We spend a lot more than the appropriation every year. So the last couple of years, we've increased that line item. And water pollution control staff. You see there are 4 vacancies here. One of the vacancies is a driver and an operator, and one's a mechanic. The mechanic, we're looking at actually not bringing back a mechanic to the staff, and that salary is equal to the operator staff salary. So we're looking at bringing on another water pollution control operator and replacing the mechanic. Hopefully in the future, we can also hire a driver. And the operator one is an assistant operator, and we're looking at how we want to fill that position as well. And we will have a change in this department as well, as our water pollution control superintendent or plant manager has announced his retirement. So, we'll be On March 29th, he'll be retiring, so we'll be looking at filling that position, and then any other positions to backfill. All right, sewer enterprise. Let's see. We were able to level fund this on the expense side as well. Fuel, let's see. So our sewer enterprise staff, fully staffed. We don't have any vacancies currently, which is good. And then last but not least is our water enterprise fund. So our water budget did increase a bit. Last year, we had a large increase in, and you can see under the FY23 expenditures for non-energy utility water, which was the amount of water that we purchased from the city of New Bedford due to a number of our wells and one treatment facility being down for over a year. So we had spent 1.8 million in water, and we had increased, and also the city increased their cost per 1,000 gallons. And we increased our budget to 1.4 million, and we're currently right below the percentage of the year. So basically when we were at 55%, I think we're at like 49% of that budget. So we're pretty close with that line item. So it looks like we should be okay. Last year we had to transfer some funds to make up that deficit from purchasing.
Do you have the same ability if, God forbid, something happens again?
We do with the rate increases of the past couple of years, both in water and sewer, it looks like last year we really didn't see a bounce back in retained earnings, but this year we're seeing some better revenues. So we're looking pretty good. So as our water department staff, you can see there's a number. It looks like we have 5 vacancies. One we're trying to fill, and we've been trying to fill for probably about 9 months. Assistant water and sewer superintendent position. We've interviewed and haven't found a candidate yet. And then one driver, a craftsman, and then one of the utility billing clerks. And that's it for the operational budget. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Stunned into silence.
Right there at the top, Tim, the little projector, right above the word insert.
Yep.
Yep. Click on it.
All right.
Way to go.
All right, so this is our capital for FY '25. Move along, we'll start with our administration capital. So we had met with the CIP committee, and we had some questions and we've made a couple revisions since then, and a couple other items have come up. So the large item,
Have they approved the your CIP plan yet?
yeah, we're going to present again.
So we're still in the review stage of the departments. We have a few departments left. And then Tim submitted a readjustment on his CIP, but we'll meet again. Maybe we'll have to have Tim back in also.
So this
We
is
haven't-
just
we
a
haven't-
draft at the moment, or
Yeah.
proposed?
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
So the first item is a Preserve 40B pump station upgrades for $2.3 million. So this is, let's see, so we have Stantec, we had hired to design the upgrade for two of our main pump stations on Route 6 and Ellsworth Street to provide capacity, enough capacity to accept the sewer flows from the 40B development, the preserve. The cost to upgrade these, the plan is at 100%, and the estimated cost is $2.3 million. The developer has agreed to pay $250,000 towards that. We had agreed through our sewer enterprise fund to contribute $160,000, and Lincoln Park Development had agreed to contribute $100,000 to these upgrades. So that still leaves quite a bit for the town. Without these upgrades at the pump stations, we really can't allow the sewer extension and connections to those buildings because we can't take on that flow or we'll be above capacity. Second item, Smith Neck Road design. This was kind of an emergency, and due to the last 3 storms that we've had flooding, a lot of flooding on Smith Neck Road, and undermining of pavement and erosion. So we're trying to retain that edge of the road with boulders, but you're going to have to come up with a design. The town also has an application in for a grant, which would also help with this. But to get the design moving, I added $150,000 towards the design. Then we have the rate and efficiency study, where we had hired, originally I had proposed capital last year for the rate and efficiency study in multiple divisions, which was sewer enterprise, water enterprise, and solid waste enterprise. And the town administration decided to target, I think, the sewer enterprise portion of that towards ARPA funding. It's not feasible to go through ARPA funding for this study, so we're coming back for general fund contribution, because it includes a rate and efficiency study of all the enterprise funds, as well as the efficiency study of the entire department, which includes general funded. And then electronic gate for the DPW administration building. Currently, the highway division has an electronic gate where you have a card to get in, and it senses a vehicle to exit. We're looking at the same. Currently, we bring in staff early on overtime to open the gates, and sometimes they stay late to close the gates. So the gates can be designed to close automatically at a certain time and open automatically. So this is a section of Smith Neck Road. You can see that lower right section. That's one of the more recent storms where we had flooding all the way across the road, and then I don't show the after effect, but there was some undermining and loss of pavement. So we were looking at that section, and the top left is the locust map. Rate and efficiency study, just what I discussed. And this is a similar automatic gate. The gate is already in place. We actually had a resident drove through it last year. I don't know if they weren't unhappy that we were closed or just didn't see the gate. It was kind of at dusk. And they drove through it and then left, took off. And the resident's son came in the next day and let us know that, you know, his father was distraught after he ran into the gate and took off. So we replaced the gate, and now we're looking to add some electronics to it. This is actually last year's capital. We had a GAP, alternative energy GAP grant that we were awarded from the state to improve efficiency with our HVAC system and our controls at our DPW administration building and the water pollution control laboratory facility. That project was just recently completed, so these are the new heat pump system on the left, and the right side is all the updated efficient controls. So I think the existing controls are from like 1982. They were analog, nothing was digital. So these are all programmable, and everything, you can adjust everything through an app on the computer, so it's good. And the heat pump system in the laboratory was needed. We were using portable AC units to maintain the laboratory temperature, and when you're analyzing lab samples, you have to maintain a consistent temperature to make sure that the samples are analyzed consistently. And it was tough to do because the HVAC system wasn't efficient and it wasn't consistent. So this new system should run pretty well. Engineering, we're looking at adding a pickup truck to the fleet. We have a vacant engineering position, so this wouldn't be a replacement, it'd be a new truck. We have looked at, I know the chief was discussing some hybrid vehicles. We looked at some hybrid and electronic vehicles, but they're so far out to order and the expenses that we're having a hard time getting any of the hybrid or electric vehicles. If you look at the state vehicle list, there's a very small number of electric and hybrid vehicles available versus gas. So. All right. So the Department of Services and Infrastructure Highway Division, this is a pretty large capital. Starting with our road maintenance. So every year, we request approximately $1 million in road maintenance. And it takes care of pothole repair, pavement, milling, crack sealing, overlays, different types of surfacing, paint striping, crosswalk painting, sidewalk repair, landscaping. With all the increases in the past few years, that $1 million doesn't really go far anymore. I had presented to the select board last year to keep all of our roads in a consistent, like 80% road surface rating. You need about $10 million per year to maintain all of our roads and keep them in a good rating. So typically we will get $1 million in capital, and the state usually gives us Chapter 90 money as well, just over $1 million. I think the last 10 years we've gotten about $1.2 million per year. And they ask the same questions, you know, what would it cost to maintain the roads in a good rating? And we tell them every year about $10 million, and they give us the same 1.2, so.
Any proposal to bridge that gap going forward? That's a huge gap.
Yeah, so in the last few years, probably the last 5 years, we've added different projects. So rather than just $1 million, we've requested money. So we did a lot of upgrades in the Bliss Corner neighborhoods, including new curbing, sidewalks, and roadway reconstruction. So those were probably annually from another 1.2 to 2.5 million annually. Last year, we didn't get funded for any of those projects, so it kind of set us behind. So this year, we have a few more projects on the queue. And sometimes the state kicks in a little extra money. I think for the year before last, we had a pretty hard winter. And after the winter, they gave us about $650,000 in winter recovery assistance funding, which went to road maintenance as well. And we're also looking at a new Vector truck and a brush chipper. The Vector truck is about $638,000. The brush chipper is about $63,000. Our current vac truck is about 20 years old. It needs a lot of maintenance now. We would use the existing vac truck for our water pollution control facility because they use it primarily for the wet wells and the pump stations and manholes and coming into the pump stations and at the facility. So we would use the old truck for that, and then the new truck would be for the construction division and the highway department. This is our 2009 wood chipper. We have, we have a bucket truck. We have a tree crew that's consistently out there daily working on trees, and our chipper's seen better days, and we're looking to upgrade it. Then we have an F550 dump truck with a plow. Again, we were talking about, replacing a dump truck, a large that dump truck that would require CDL, or we're looking at, rather than bringing in just a 34,000 GVW dump truck, also an F550 for the non-CDL drivers. This is Robert Street. We're looking at moving over to Robert Street neighborhood. You see the picture below. It's the existing roadway and the sidewalks. There's not a lot of reveal left on the curbing there. It's been overlaid multiple times. The sidewalks in disrepair on both sides of the street. We get a lot of complaints. So we're looking at starting in this neighborhood to do some reconstruction. This would be about $830,000, I believe. Next road project, closer to the Bliss Corner neighborhood across Dartmouth Street, looking at 2,830 linear feet of road reconstruction, sidewalk and curb, for Arnold Street, Center Street, Coolidge, and Webster Street. We're on Water Street. We're looking to retrofit some of our drainage infrastructure. That currently Buzzard Bay Coalition's working on cleanup of the Buttonwood Brook and the Upon-Agansett Bay. A lot of the drainage structures in this area on Water Street, Gladys Street, Day Street, they all collect and directly discharge to the bay. So we're looking to upgrade some of these structures with some added treatment. So we can get some stormwater treatment for sediment, floatables, and possibly nitrogen and phosphorus and other nutrients. This is Day Street and Gladys Street. Flag Swamp Road, a few years back, we upgraded about 50% of Flag Swamp Road and upgraded the stormwater. So we're looking to upgrade the rest. It's about 4,830 linear feet of road, add stormwater. It's about 800,000 for the stormwater. And then we would reconstruct the road. As you can see, the roadway's in pretty poor shape. Another problem with the roadway, it's extremely narrow, so we would have to remove a few trees along that left side of the road to increase the width a little bit to make it a little safer. That guardrail on the right side is along a cranberry bog, so it prohibits that going any wider that way. So Peyton Aaron Village, granite curb. So we had installed a lot of granite curb around Elm Street and Bridge Street. We're looking to do the same along Water Street, Seawood Hill, and Prospect. We put a binder out on that area last year, and looking to upgrade the curbing and surface it this year. And then lastly, we resurfaced about a quarter of Hicksville Road, maybe a little more, maybe about a third last year with a cold-in-place recycling program. The rest of the road needs reconstruction, but it also needs drainage, needs stormwater. So there's no stormwater on Hicksville Road. And with all the development that's gone on through the years, every development raises the property and pushes the water into the road. So we have a lot of standing water out there that we need to work on. Oh, and this is another project from last year. We had requested capital for the old highway facility furnace and steam heat. We didn't get capital, but we did have some existing articles that we for the garage facility that we used, and we just recently replaced the furnace, the boiler, and all the heaters in the garage, and it's a hydro system, and it just got online about a couple weeks ago, so I don't have any pictures of the new system yet, but I will be updating them. Okay, solid waste and recycling capital. This year, we're requesting a cab and chassis 40 cubic yard roll-off truck. So when you go to the transfer station and you see the roll-off containers there, we use these trucks to haul those roll-off containers to dump. Last year, we had requested this. I believe it was recommended by the CIP committee, but it didn't make the warrant. So the cost went up, I think, $25,000 or $30,000 since last year. All the emissions equipment has changed this year for a lot of the large diesel vehicles, so the prices are increasing. So it's about $286,000. That's our existing truck. 1991 Mack. For construction division, we're looking at replacing a one-ton dump with a new Ford F-550 dump truck. Another one, we chose not to add another CDL required dump truck to this fleet, so we're going with a smaller truck with a smaller plow. Replacing a 1998 Ford F-550 with 100,000 miles. Water pollution control facility. We're looking at a full evaluation. We've been working with a consultant putting together a scope of a full evaluation for the facility in the collection system, and the cost is about $650,000. Preliminary treatment SCADA. We do annual upgrades on our SCADA, which is our data acquisition for, we have it for both wastewater and the water. So the cost is about $162,250 for the upgrades. We have a biofilter blowers, which is the ventilation for the compost facility that pulls the air out of the compost facility and discards it into the biofilter. We have to replace 2 of the pumps and the blowers. This is also requested through the county for ARPA funding. And it hasn't been approved yet, so we have it on capital. We have II, inflow and infiltration remediation, for about $250,000. This goes towards our inflow and infiltration of our wastewater collection system. We're currently in a contract with a company that they're installing sensors and flow meters throughout town to evaluate our inflow and infiltration. Once this study is complete, we'll have some data and analytics to track and trace any of our II in the system, and then we'll do some further studies. And once we narrow down some of our high flow areas, we'll come up with a construction project to mitigate this. Also, the new skid steer for $80,000, and the Preserve 40B pump station upgrades that I spoke about earlier. This $160,000 is what we would contribute out of the sewer enterprise fund. Here's our sewer master plan on the left. On the right, that's our facility. This is on the left is our compost facility that's in dire need for some upgrades. We have it's a high ammonia atmosphere in there and highly corrosive, so we're looking to upgrade that, as well as our SCADA. Here's our top left. That's actually the biofilter being reconstructed. Down bottom left is the VFDs that run the blowers, and to the right, that's one of the blowers that we're looking at replacing. The blowers cost about $30,000 a piece. That's it. Here's one of our inflow and infiltration projects underway. Guys are working on manhole structures in one of our sewer easements. So the skid steer loader that we're requesting, so this on the right is our compost facility, and those are the solids from the compost that have been dehydrated. And the skid steer is needed to get in those bays and rotate that material and pull it out when it's done. And they last about 5 years in this environment, and we actually have to request a special equipment with a positive air cabin skid steer to keep the air out of the cabin so the operator can continue to operate.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the composting done indoors?
Yes. Well, so the system involves 2 large presses that take the wet solids and they press the solids and dehydrate them.
Okay.
And once they dehydrate them, you don't want them to have more moisture.
More moisture,
So then,
okay.
then the compost goes into bays and it further dries out and we rotate it. And then, once it's ready, we use, so we have the brush area, that drop-off area for residential brush and commercial. And we chip all that brush and then we mix it with this compost.
Right.
And then we actually create a grade A loam-type product and sell it.
How much do we get for that, Tim?
Good question.
Not a lot. It varies. Right now, our contract is with a company, and we basically split 50% of the profit. So after their costs, we split the profit. So it's not a lot of money, but it's better than being in the negative and having to pay to get rid of it.
Yeah. Is this the most efficient way of composting it?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, there are other ways. You can burn it. You can ship it and dump it elsewhere, which is you're going to have to pay big money to get rid of it. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so this is our water and sewer division capital. So we start off with treatment plant, clear well and backwash, storage, tank design. This is at our 579 treatment facility on the Westport Road. We're looking at upgrading that facility. So we're currently in the first phase of the design of that, and the construction is estimated at about $3.2 million. So we're looking at trying to complete the last phase of the design, and the construction is targeted for ARPA funding. So if we can get the design completed early enough, we can and apply for the funding through ARPA, hopefully get at least a good portion of the project funded through ARPA. The next project is a Route 6 water main replacement, estimated at $1.8 million. Hopefully the cost will be a little lower. We're working with a consultant that's designing the corridor of Route 6 from Fons Corner Road currently to Hathaway Road, and then continuing on to Slocum Road. So we designed the water main replacement and gave them the design to put in their plans. So we're hoping that we can do this work while Mass DOT is working on Route 6 and use their traffic management, which will definitely reduce some of the costs. But they're slated to start at the end of 24? Or at the beginning of 2025 with construction. Next is a PFAS evaluation. So we're looking to evaluate all of our facilities for PFAS. The state is working on regulations for limits of PFAS in water. So we're looking at evaluating all of our facilities and if they need any mitigation. And we have Smith Neck Road tank painting and maintenance, about $350,000. Skater upgrades, so skater equipment similar to the wastewater, it's $175,000 for the upgrades. An additional F-550 dump truck with a plow for the water department. A Ford Edge for $40,000, which would be for the assistant water and superintendent. An insertion valve at Fons Corner Road for $50,000, which is, I'll explain it when I get to the photo, and then a well and pump inspections for all of our well and pumps. It's $20,000, so. This is kind of a clear well diagram. The left picture is our 579 facility. All the way back, you'll see a couple depressions in the bottom. Those are the lagoons that we backwash to. So in between the building and those lagoons, we would construct the Clearwell building. So this would improve water quality and also give us some resilience and contact time between our treatment chemicals and the water before it gets out to the distribution system.
I was going to ask you, Tim, prior to this, Does UMass Dartmouth buy any more water from us, or are they completely self-sufficient?
No, they buy all their water from us.
I thought they were gonna try to become self-sufficient.
No, they're putting in some irrigation wells for, but they're not self-sufficient, no.
Okay.
They would have to have their own treatment facility, you know,
Gotcha.
for drinking water.
Gotcha.
And then they also pay, you know, sewer fees for we meter their sewer as well as their water. This is stuff to see, but this is the section of Route 6 from Fons Corner Road to Hathaway Road that we're looking at replacing the water main. It's a 12-inch ductile iron water main. Just a flyer on PFAS and products. These are a lot of the products that contain PFAS that we see every day. Smith Neck Road water tank, looking at sanding and repainting the tank to keep it from corroding. Is that SCADA system upgrades? I don't know why the tank is sideways there, but there's our F550. Additional Ford Edge for the assistant water superintendent.
Are we buying these outright, or have we ever entertained leasing?
We don't typically, we did lease years ago when we had the electric vehicles, but that was through a grant, so our lease cost was pretty low. But typically, we purchase them and then use them for about 10 years, and then vehicles like this would be cycled to another department after 10 years. So on the left is the Fons Corner Road pumping station. This picture was supposed to be of the valve. I'm not sure why the car is there, but the $50,000 for an insertion valve at this facility is because when that pumping station was constructed, there was no isolation valve outside of the building, and there are multiple residents that are connected to it. And the city of New Bedford's meter is in that building where we purchase water from the city. And they want to change out their meter because it's about 30 years old. So in order to isolate that facility, to change out the meter, we need to install a valve. Well and pump inspections, and that's the end of my show.
So much information, thank you.
know.
My head is spinning. Questions? Anyone?
I'm good, thank you. Very well done.
Thank you.
How successful you think you'll be at the CIP with this? Is there any pushback on anything, or?
There hasn't been any pushback. I know that there was actually some recommendations of increasing our request for road maintenance. You know, in the $1 million line item, if we're not getting the projects funded, or maybe we can get more funded on that line item. I didn't increase it yet, but I wanted to kind of discuss that with capital as well.
You showed a picture of some serious flooding down near the water and how the roads keep getting eroded. Do you have a long-term plan of how you're gonna make, how are we gonna deal with that? Because, oceans are rising, and that's just gonna become more and more problematic.
So I had a line item or a capital request for design for an upgrade on Smith Neck Road.
Yeah.
And we also have a grant for the MVP grant
Yep.
for both Smith Neck Road and Potomska Road, which also floods. Smith Neck Road, I think, we couldn't really raise it, but,
Right.
so my thought is to install a low slope seawall, similar to, there was one that was installed a couple years ago along Smith Neck Road, continue that down. And there was also talk and a concept design for a sidewalk along that eastern edge of Smith Neck Road, so we could probably cap that seawall with with the sidewalk.
Sidewalk.
And that would protect the sidewalk and continue that from the bridge where it leaves off to Bayview.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah,
curious, because,
yeah. And then Potomska Road, one of my thoughts is raising the elevation of Potomska Road. So we did a couple phases of reconstruction on Potomska Road, but we left off, we stopped where we stopped because going any further, we need to do something to increase the elevation, but also possibly install a culvert underneath to allow the water to flush out back and forth on both sides.
okay.
So that, I think is, hopefully if we get the MVP grant, we can look at both of those projects this year.
That would be awesome. Thanks. Thank you for the insight.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
So as we wrap up here tonight, I'll just go over the schedule for the next couple of weeks. On 3/14, we'll do a preliminary review of the warrant articles. And also, at the 3/14 meeting, Sean will do a presentation on the long-term capital planning committee that's developed a plan for all the items that are longer than the 10-plus years. Also, on 3/28, Sean will do the town administrator's budget, EMA, and the building budget. And on 3/28, I will also do the finance departments. And then on 4/4, we'll be doing the schools. So on the school, yeah, will be the schools. So,
Good night.
Hi,
Thank you.
Tim.
so 3/28 also, you'll have a draft of the Schedule A in hand to look at.
Good.
So no meeting on the 7th and no meeting on the 21st?
Correct.
Okay.
Sean won't be here on the 21st, and I think there's a few members that won't be here on the
Yeah,
On
the
the seventh.
7th I can't do, but.
So it's,
No, but I just want to make sure we don't have
Right,
meetings at this
right.
point. It's only the ones.
all right,
okay.
so it's 3/14, 3/28, and 4/4.
Won't be here the 28th.
You won't be on the. So then, and then you'll have a preliminary Schedule A on the 28th, and then the final department will be the schools on the 4th.
Okay.
So we'll have wrapped up the departments.
Okay, and you said the warrant was going to be reviewed on the 14th?
Correct, to review the warrant articles.
Nice,
Good,
good,
excellent.
excellent. Very good, Gary.
All right. Just for everybody else's knowledge, by the way, I know he's going to give us the presentation on the Capitol, but if you get a chance, I'd watch the Monday night Select Board meeting,
Okay. Thank you.
because he gave that presentation to them, and then you could get your questions lined up.
Yes, it's the same presentation that you'll
Who
have.
gave the,
Sean gave the presentation at the Select Board meeting on the long-term capital.
On Monday, this Monday that just,
Yeah, Monday.
You know when it's gonna be on, cable TV? Do we know?
I believe it already, it's even
Now,
on
I watched
YouTube.
it this
Oh,
afternoon.
it's on now?
Yeah,
All right.
and it's always on YouTube, I think. You
YouTube,
get it
on demand.
I usually watch it on YouTube. It should be
Yeah,
uploaded
no, it's there,
already.
because I watched it today.
And I will contact Conservation to get the form completed.
All right.
So just a suggestion, I'm not sure we should have police and DPW in the same meeting.
I've already emailed him about it.
Wow.
It's a lot, I mean, I know that
Too
in the
much.
past we've gone to
It's too
6:30.
much.
It's a lot of information, even individually, it's a lot of information
Yeah.
to
Right.
gather, but
It's too much together.
it's.
Maybe one and then a smaller budget if you
Yeah.
need to fill
Yeah.
Like,
space.
schools is a large department, so we don't want to really include anything with schools, and that's why that's kind of by itself.
Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, yes.
There'll be nothing else on the
schools will
agenda
be-
besides the schools or
But I
minutes.
feel like DPW and DPD also need to be separated. This is a long meeting.
Yeah,
I don't think normally in the past we had the two together.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah, and we have
remembering
those
correctly,
two-
but.
We have those two other days that
No,
we
yeah, no.
potentially
yeah,
could have
it's
did them
it's
on.
tough because of scheduling too, sometimes we're trying to
Yep.
work within the.
No, understood, it's just,
No.
we're all on information
Yeah, I think-
overload right now, I'm sure of
Yeah,
it.
it's, we were going on over 2.5 hours.
And-
Exactly.
Okay, that's all I have
Okay.
Yeah.
tonight,
good.
thank you very
All
much.
right, so we're all set, I guess. huh?
Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Yes,
All right, good.
make a motion to
Carrie,
adjourn.
And I will second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.